Throughout all of Fairy Tail, vast majority of the main antagonists or big bads of the story tend to get taken down by Natsu, our MC. And throughout all these different fights and experiences throughout the story, we expect Natsu to, at this point in Hunter's Quest, be not just the strongest of his team, but the strongest in the entire guild of Fairy Tail. And if you want to go even further, probably top 5 in the verse of all time. Obviously, Acnologia and Zeref at their best are still stronger than Natsu currently is at this point, but obviously that could still very much change. However, what if I told you that despite Natsu taking on some of the strongest threats in all of Fairy Tail, he does not crack the top 3 of the Fairy Tail guild? And that it confirms one big thing about Fairy Tail, especially towards the end, or at least in 100 Years Quest. That is, power scaling does not matter, and it is on a sliding scale dependent on specific situations and stimuli. But even with that, a primary force of hierarchy is still maintained within the story, despite all the countless power-ups and powerful opponents that even Natsu has defeated throughout the course of the story. And to make matters even more interesting, the creator of Fairy Tail confirms all of this. So we're just going to jump right into things. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, shows you guys enjoy the content and make it on the channel and shows you want to see more. And if you want to support the channel even more directly, go and check out my Patreon, link in the description. I'll be posting videos that I haven't seen there before. I'm going to try and make it more worth your while to go over there. Everything from the Patreon helps make these future videos possible and to be even more consistent than they ever were before. Now then, what do I mean by the fact that Hiro Mashima, the creator of Fairy Tail, basically confirms that the hierarchy of the Fairy Tail guild has not changed, but also that Natsu doesn't even crack the top 3 of the guild. Well, on the 14th, or was it 15th, of April, Hiro Mashima went on another Twitter space where he was answering questions from fans and interacting with everybody, and the question of, essentially, can Natsu beat Laxus, or is Laxus still stronger than Natsu, or is Gildart still the strongest in Fairy Tail? And Mashima basically says, like, taking out the whole protagonist buffs and stuff like that, Natsu can't beat Erza, Laxus, and Gildarts. Meaning that at this point, in terms of the baseline hierarchy, Mashima has no real plans on changing it whatsoever. Natsu might be top 5 in Fairy Tail, but isn't cracked the top 3. Meaning that a lot of the stuff we see Natsu do, Erza, Laxus, and Gildarts are stronger in that aspect. Now, I'm going to go on to explain why I kind of see Mashima's point, but also why Mashima decided to primarily say taking out stuff like protagonist boosts and stuff like that and external factors. Because I think what Mashima really means is that baseline Natsu, at max, maybe Lightning Flame Dragon mode Natsu, can't beat Erza, Laxus, and Gildarts going all out in 1v1 fights. And to an extent, I can see that. Gildarts was already a literal, like, continental threat just casually by himself when he was first introduced. And he survived Acnologia pulling his guts out. Laxus and Erza were already built insanely different, and Laxus also got a power-up recently in 100 Years Quest during the Doggermog arc, to the point where he doesn't even need the Dragon Slayer Lacrima in his chest anymore to have his powers. Plus, he has the Crimson Lightning. Erza was always just built different. Not only that, she has an enchantment magic and all different types of weapons and resistances with her armors and stuff like that for a multitude of situations. So, if you want to tell me that base Natsu, or at max, Lightning Flame mode Natsu, can't beat Erza, Laxus, or Gildarts in a 1v1 fight, go being a bit serious, I can believe you. Dragon Force is where things get kinda shaky, or at least normal Dragon Force for Natsu. I can see him beating Erza and Laxus. Gildarts would be a close fight, because remember, Gildarts has no Dragon Slayer magic, so him not being able to do jack shit to any kind of dragons makes complete and total sense. But I still think that having Gildarts be the top of the verse is still a cool way to show that there is still more to power than what we've gotten with Fairy Tail thus far. But current Natsu in the manga of 100 Years Quest, with his brand new Fire Dragon King mode and everything like that, and the whole protagonist boosts and stuff like that that Mashima mentioned, which I would say is power of friendship for the most part, or the power of emotion, then yeah, Natsu is top of the food chain in Fairy Tail. And if I were to, like, take the time, which would probably be like hours of research and stuff like that, to really nail down how strong Natsu, Erza, Laxus, and Gildarts are at their strongest, and to say how Natsu would win, or how definitively the hierarchy of power goes in Fairy Tail at max power with everything we know about them thus far. Natsu is on top. But also, I don't want to do shit like that, because doing that, especially with Fairy Tail, is going to take me a lot of time and rereading and stuff like that, and I really don't want to do that for a long-ass time, if I can help it in terms of that aspect, because power scaling is a slippery slope, and can literally is one feat or calculation away from me being entirely wrong. But yeah, all that's to say is that Natsu, I still think, and many others can probably confirm, that he is the strongest character in the Fairy Tail Guild, with the exception of outside the guild right now being Ignia, Zeref, and Acnologia, who are both dead right now, still being at the top of the food chain, as Mashima himself has confirmed in past interviews, with Acnologia being the top of the verse in terms of overall power from the end of Fairy Tail. So, that I agree with, and I really don't see any real arguments towards it. Maybe by the end of 100 Years Quest, Natsu will be on Acnologia's tier of power, with the Dragon King mode that he has now once more. But even then, this whole question and answer from Mashima just confirms that he has no real need or want to change the baseline power structure and hierarchy of the Fairy Tail Guild in particular. Why would he want Natsu to overpower the top 3 of the guild thus far, being Erza, Laxus, and especially Gildarts? I'm keeping Mira out of the top of the guild, because she's basically relative to Erza to the most part, with a lot less stamina. So she's like number 4, if I'm being honest with you, or Natsu is number 4, Mira is number 5, if we're being brutally honest with us right now, with I think Lucy or Gray overtaking her. But if we're going by the baseline hierarchy of Fairy Tail, Mira is still top 5 in that aspect. So that would still be an insane thing to think about. But this just shows that Mashima, in terms of power scaling, doesn't really care unless it adds to the story. And when it's outside of the plot progression of the story, having the main hierarchy of power in the Fairy Tail Guild the same as it ever was makes sense for character interactions, comedic purposes, and for just continuously giving a type of ceiling for the characters like Natsu to aim for, despite in terms of real in-world feats and stuff like that, Natsu has long surpassed Erza especially. And Gildarts, I'd say raw power probably a bit higher, if not uneven playing field. Laxus is still exponentially growing stronger. He's a Dragon Slayer too, and he's gotten his own buff over time, but like even then, the new big top 3 of Fairy Tail would be Gildarts, Natsu, and Laxus, with Natsu being the strongest at the end of 100 Years Quest. But Mashima doesn't care much in terms of having the members of the guild competing against each other in terms of overall strength. That was never really the point, like, in any aspect. That's why Battle of Fairy Tail, in OG Fairy Tail, and the, I guess, redux of it in the Alderaan arc for the most part, were done the way that they were. They weren't meant to find out the strongest in the guild. It was just desperation for specific situations, with specific fights being done to progress the story. And at the end, there was, outside of the main hierarchy that was previously established, no real change in that hierarchy. Gildarts wasn't even introduced yet, and we still had the Mystigan, Erza, and Laxus trio in that aspect. Granted, I believe the manga for Fairy Tail mentions Gildarts way beforehand, alongside Erza and Laxus and Mystigan as the 4 strongest, so I could be wrong. I gotta double check on that one at some point. But even then, Mashima doesn't want to change the hierarchy of Fairy Tail. It's too much work, if I'm being honest with you. That's probably why he doesn't want to do that. But also finds it still a lot of fun and adds more to character interactions and funny and wacky scenarios for the characters to keep the hierarchy the way that it is. And to that extent, I get it. It's funny, I like it. I still find it hilarious when Natsu and Gray do not want to piss off Erza, because despite the 2 of them still basically being stronger than Erza, I would have to say, or bare minimum, on par with her in terms of relative strength, granted, I still say Natsu and Gray are stronger than Erza at this point, they still fear getting her pissed off to the point of her beating them up. And I find that hilarious. Even though Natsu was very much a battle junkie to test out his strength against his friends, the hierarchy will never change, ever, unless the end of 100 Years Quest fully cements a new power hierarchy of some kind to be done in the future. And that, I don't think, is going to happen for a very, very long time, or even at all, based on Mashima's answer to this question to begin with. But yeah, that's really all I have to say for this entire thing with Mashima, talking about the power scaling and hierarchy of the Fairy Tail Guild. I just wanted to have like a genuine fun conversation about this. This has no real circumstantial stuff whatsoever in terms of the story and actual hierarchy of power in terms of feats and numbers and calculations, yada yada yada, and hacks or whatever the hell. This was just fun to talk about and to see how Mashima views the power levels, or at least hierarchy of the characters, and how it kind of confirms what a lot of us probably figured at this point. The power levels in the story never really mattered to the most part in terms of which character is stronger than the other. It just matters for what is for the overall circumstances of the story at this point. If he wants to do a final power hierarchy with some characters being at the top, he'll do it. But for the most part, in terms of how things are, they're just going to be the same unless the story calls for like Natsu being stronger than everybody for the current feat of current antagonists, like right now Ignia and the other circumstances. But hey, that's still always fun. Fairy Tail will always be a lot of fun for me, even with some of the power scaling nonsense that goes on in this story. But you guys let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below on what you think of Mashima's words. Are you taking this seriously? Do you think it really meant just Natsu in general can't beat erza, laxus, and guildarts in 1v1 all-out fights just in general? Or do you really think he just meant base Natsu and he's just saying all this stuff just for shits and giggles because he himself doesn't really care about changing the hierarchy because of how fun it is just to keep it the way it is? Let me know in the comment section down below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Helps me know that you guys enjoy the content here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And on screen now, you'll probably see a playlist of Fairy Tail videos, or the most likely next possible video that is best for you on screen, so go check those out. With all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day.